Well, welcome everyone. This is a continuation of a Water and Sewer Commissioners hearing from back on June 24th. Before we open the hearing, I'm going to turn it over to Town Administrator Mike Nicholson for some information.
We have two members of the Board of Public Works participating tonight remotely through the remote participation part of the open meeting law 940 CMR 29.10. Sheila Dibb and Jeff Stillings will be joining us for reason number 5 due to their geographic location currently. So any votes that the Board of Public Works takes tonight regarding the rates for the hearing will have to be a roll call vote by name separate, and that'll be recorded by the recorder, who is me for this evening. The rules that the Select Board set for public hearings in the town last June are both available via handouts and available on the walls in the room. You'll also notice there's a handout of the PowerPoint being given by Director Buckley tonight, available by the door as well. Because the copy machines in the town hall are black and white, some of the graphs may be hard to see, so we printed big copies of them and have them on either wall for anyone who's looking to get a clearer view of what that is being presented there. And we have our town engineering consultants, Weston and Sampson. We have Hillary and Pat here with us, Director Buckley, and then in the back of the room we have Mark and Matt Abrahams from the Abrahams Group as well.
Okay, so I'll officially open the hearing. It's July 16th, 2019, 6:03 p.m. This is being broadcast live. It's also being recorded for future broadcast on Rutland's cable TV channel and also on YouTube. So I guess we'll hand it off to Mike Nicholson for a quick recap, or do you want to do Joe first?
We'll do Joe, but I will mention we also have our town accountant, Dan Haynes, here with us as well. So thank you, Dan.
Welcome, Dan.
So we'll go with Joe.
All right, DPW Director Joe Buckley.
Good evening. Thanks to the board for coming, and thanks for the kind words you had for me the last time you met, and hopefully we can clear some of that up and have a productive hearing. Okay? So I put together some slides that basically outline the process that we've gone to date, some information on water and sewer budgets, some of the reasons behind the rate increases, and some of the proposed rates that we've already notified the board about in writing.
And again, while we switch this PowerPoint presentation, if anyone has any issues
We just
seeing,
lost it.
there we go. They're available over there by the door with some handouts, so you can also take notes on them too. We have some lines on the side.
Okay, by process, we're referring to the concerns, studies, Board of Selectmen meetings, Board of Water and Sewer Commission meetings, town meeting, rate-setting hearings, the intended continued solvent operation of the water and sewer utilities. So basically, what's taken place from roughly January to now to try and make sure that the water and sewer departments keep running and remain solvent. There have been shortfalls in the sewer budget over the last couple of years that could ultimately jeopardize some of the state funding received by the town. These have been previously resolved at fall town meeting with sewer retained earnings. And what I mean by that is the last time we couldn't pay a DCR bill, DCR actually contacted us and said that if we can't get those bills paid, they're going to come after the cherry sheet money and then possibly assess the town. What they mean by cherry sheet money is the state aid we received, the aid we used to run part of the town. In addition to operating costs and capital updates foreshadowed, there is a need for long-term planning in both water and sewer. We've talked about that at length so far already. Ultimately, the previous town administrator and the DPW superintendent commissioned a water and sewer rate study. So that was done before I got here. When I came into this job, I met with Weston and Sampson and we reviewed a whole bunch of projects we're working on. Then I got some bills from DCR, and I basically took the rate study and put that on the front burner and didn't do anything else. Again, more on process. 2018 was overall a wet year, especially in the fall, which drove up infiltration rates. For every 1 gallon we billed people in town, we were being billed for over 3 by DCR to transport wastewater. DPW asked Weston and Sampson to focus on completion of the rate study, especially considering there was a belief that the sewer utility would be as much as $300,000 behind at the close of the fiscal year, or June 30, 19. DPW attended meetings, participated in conference calls with Weston and Sampson and the Abrahams Group for completion of the study, and a report was first issued in draft form. concepts, and options were reviewed by the Board of Selectmen. So basically what we did was, because there's a lot of complicated issues in the rate study, we put it in draft form and brought it to the Board of Selectmen and started banging up some of the ideas. The study was focused on many options, and ultimately 3 plans were finalized in the report. The Board of Selectmen and the Board of Water Sewer Commissioners were involved throughout this process. These were all public meetings, and we also provided them with additional written correspondence. I think the Abrahams Group was here for at least 1, if not 2, and you were here for a couple. The Board of Selectmen, after hearing and working with the consultants and DPW, settled on a path to cover the estimated shortfall with retained earnings from water enterprise, and plan to make capital improvements to the water and sewer using borrowed money to update rates and update the rates accordingly. The use of the water enterprise retained earnings was meant to avoid rate increases in the last quarterly bill for sewer users estimated at 300 to 350%. So the real motivation behind trying to combine the accounts was so that we wouldn't slam ratepayers at the end of this last fiscal year. And then, of course, we proposed raising rates. DPW prepared budgets for both water and sewer in February of 19. The enterprise budgets went through the standard review process used in town for all town budgets. But please be advised that budgets were submitted with negative balances because the rate increase is anticipated, and managing FY19 shortfall was still in process. Most of the proposed increases are linked to fixed costs. An additional budget will be prepared at the suggestion of Mass Department of Revenue, and that actually came as recently as today. I talked to the folks from DOR. At town meeting, by majority vote, the water and sewer enterprise accounts were combined to be able to cover the projected sewer shortfall. At this time, estimated shortfalls are between 225 and 250,000. To avoid potential loss of state funding or risk an assessment by the state of every property owner in town, DCR has been contacted, and an extension on our ability to pay that last quarterly bill has been granted. Correct?
Correct.
Using the previously prepared budgets and the rate study as a tool, DPW generated water and sewer rates needed to operate the utility. In addition to the actual rate study, the Abrahams Group did a great job. They have a massive spreadsheet. How many tabs? 20, 25 tabs? With every kind of permutation you could possibly imagine. But we use that as a tool to generate a rate. Our job is to continue to provide quality, dependable drinking water and environmentally responsible wastewater collection and transportation services to the water and sewer ratepayers of Rutland. The Board of Selectmen and the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners were notified in writing of the rates and the hearing, and the process continues today. So that should be everything on process so far. Budgets. Water budget highlights, adjustments. We've had to basically bump the water budget up for the recently settled union contract. We moved a position from highway to water, and the biggest one there is also electricity. Electricity has gone up quite a bit in water, and we've had to react to that. There's a picture of the water budget on the wall, so you can get a rough idea of what every piece of the pie is going to. But what really got us to consider raising the water rate was basically increased wages, which is the settled union contract, electricity, and in the future, we're hoping to borrow some money to make capital improvements. The sewer budget. Our sewer, we're proposing a giant rate increase for sewer. And believe me, the last thing I wanted to do taking over this job was raise sewer rates. Unfortunately, the reality is we simply don't have enough coming in. Again, cover union contract increases, increased electricity costs, and rebuild retained earnings. The next slide's kind of fun. That's the sewer budget, okay? So if you look at that slide, you can see roughly 80% of that budget is out-of-town costs, and that's mostly transportation and treatment costs. What it costs to transport wastewater from Rutland through Worcester, and then what it costs to treat it at the Upper Blackstone. Those are fixed costs that we really can't necessarily control, and they drive the bulk of these rate increases. By means of example, the sewer staff or the sewer department runs on roughly half a person a week. Those little numbers that you see in there, 1%, 6%, some of that's the electricity used to run the pump stations. But we basically run a very, very bare bones sewer department, and we respond to emergencies. We don't do a lot of preventative maintenance. A lot of it gets contracted out through some of the II work. But again, the bulk of what's driving the rate increase and what's really put us in this predicament is that big green piece there, our 80%. Some of this is going to sound like reviews. Some of the increases needed for water operations, as described on the previous slides, and there will be eventually a need to pay for water repair-related debt of greater concern is sewer operations, which I just said. Transportation treatment costs for sewer have risen sharply, in some cases due to external rate increases, and also due to the unpredictable high groundwater table, which is what happened in fall of 18. There's always going to be some inflow and infiltration. Most of us, this is the one part of the whole presentation that actually has to do with engineering. So I can talk about this. There will always be some inflow and infiltration. Sometimes it's cost effective to get rid of it, sometimes it's not. II can reappear over time because of old repairs wear out and new sources develop. Average II in town over the last 5 years is around twice what we've been billing for. In the fall of 2018, it was 3.25 times of what we've been billing for. II problems could be much worse. There's no wet weather backups in town and no bubbling manholes that leak wastewater for several weeks in April. For Rutland, it's simply cost concerns. Steps are being taken and proposed updates planned to help with this. A lot of communities, and I work in this field, a lot of communities, when we talk II, it really does back up in somebody's house in April and May. There's places in Worcester where I've seen it bubble out of a manhole and go into a pond for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and there's nothing you can do. That doesn't happen here in Rutland, so take some stock in that. What we have is just cost-effective solutions. We've got to try and ratchet that down. So it could be worse, that's all I'm saying. This is just a basic graph. On the one side, it shows roughly the volume of wastewater that's been going through Rutland since roughly 2012 to now, and that line is just an increase. If you look at the 17 and 18, 19 range, you've got some real peaks. Most of that has to do with high groundwater flow. If you look over in here, this is basically the drought we had. We did a lot of charts like this in January, February, March, and presented them to the board. They've seen a lot of this through the process of us trying to explain how we're getting this done. This is just a simple graph that shows transportation and treatment costs in Rutland. So from roughly 2015 to 2019, it's gone up $400,000 or $500,000. And that's the big green chunk you saw on that graph has gone up that much for us. And that's fixed costs we can't control. These are what we've actually been measuring, what DCR is billing us, and rain. And it's a double graph. So the one on the right-hand side refers to inches of rain. The one on the left-hand side is 100 cubic feet. And the orange is basically what we've been billing folks in town. So since 2014, we've been pretty consistent for volume. This is just volume. So the orange, or the big chunk at the bottom, is the number we've been billing folks in town. The blue line is what we're being charged, okay? So we bill people based on, how much water we sell them. So but the blue is where we're getting charged. So you can see the gap is pretty significant. The gray line is the increased rain. And it doesn't follow it exactly because it's done quarterly. This is a quarterly graph. But you can see roughly that the more rain we have, the more we're getting billed. And that speaks back to the II problems in town. Okay, so some recent averages. Over the last 5 years, we've billed for an average flow of 56,612. 100 cubic feet is the measurement we use. We don't usually use gallons. By DCR per quarter to transport wastewater. The average quarterly billed flow over the last year has been 71,760 CCF. So we're billing folks in town for that first number, 56,000. We're getting billed for 71,000. Average rainfall over the last 5 years, 12.23 inches per quarter. Average rainfall over the last year, 15.19 inches. Water supply charges need to increase by approximately 5%. I jumped ahead, I'm sorry. This is my last slide. This is just the proposed rates. Water supply charges need to increase approximately 5%. We're conservatively proposing 10. Sewer charges, and this one's the tough one. Sewer charge increases, we're proposing an approximately increase of flow-based rates for 55% or 1066 per CCF, and inflow and infiltration charges will remain at 33.25 per quarter. Now, at this point, I will take questions, and I'd ask that they go through the chair. And we're trying to avoid direct questions to our consultants, so either go through the chair or myself.
If I may first. Just as a recap to follow up on some of the questions that we said we'd get back with answers on from our last, from the first date of this public hearing. Joe and I received the fourth quarter bill from DCR for transportation and treatment that came in at just over $212,000 there, compared to the original one that we got on my first day starting here that I remember Bob Reed and I, it was the first piece of mail I opened up as an employee of the town, and it was quite the time. But it's about half of what we got back in January, is the long and short there. Joe and I received a phone call today from the Division of Local Services from the Department of Revenue regarding their review of our town meeting article that we passed at town meeting regarding the combination of the two accounts, and provided some clarification on that. The motion that was put on the floor at town meeting was sufficient to create a new combined water and sewer account, and all water and sewer receipts that are being collected from July 1st through now are being entered into that combined water and sewer account. The existing enterprise accounts that were there for water and for sewer have a balance in them. Fall town meeting will have to vote to officially rescind those accounts. DOR does consider them closed, however, so the money that was in there will fall to free cash for reappropriation at a fall town meeting into the combined water and sewer account. However, to clean things up on their end, they're requiring us to vote to rescind those accounts formally at the fall town meeting. And if not, they're going to withhold setting our tax rate on the grounds that once a enterprise account is created, it cannot be rescinded for another 3 years. So that is the legal standing behind there. The last major clarification that DOR provided to us was that there was a question at the last couple meetings as to paying water back the money. And what DOR has informed us is due to this is going to sound somewhat silly, but a syntax way of looking at it. In short, that can't be done legally in the town, with the idea that there was a court case that said you cannot charge a ratepayer more than the basic cost of their service provision. So meter flow and work done to improve that service, their share of that. Anything above that is considered an illegal tax through the Emerson ruling in the Supreme Judicial Court. Where the difference is, because when we had this, Joe and I asked the converse of the question, if water money was being used to help pay sewer, what we got out of that was a direct appropriation from a water account cannot pay a sewer bill, and a direct appropriation from a sewer account cannot pay a water bill. However, the remaining amounts that are in those accounts are no longer water and sewer. They fall into free cash, and free cash can pay an old bill. So we can't then charge a sewer user to pay back something that was technically free cash in the end. So that was a clarification that we received from DOR as well. So those are the major points that we received this morning.
Just to be clear, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was going to kick it back to you now.
We were probably 45 minutes to an hour on the phone with DOR. We described everything that had come up in the meetings. We tried to give every possible permutation to try and define that, and they were pretty clear on what we could and could not do.
And I will say, like Joe and I said the total conversation was probably an hour, 45 to 2 hour total phone call in the end, because we just want to make sure every possible situation was addressed. And they started off by saying this isn't something solely specific to Rutland. This is actually something that's being seen in a lot of the central Mass communities, particularly in South Central Massachusetts. It's just the older infrastructure is seeing a lot of I&I issues at this point. I forget the exact one that she used as an example, but it's not just us, and they wanted to assure us of that. It's just because this is something that's coming up in many different communities at the same time. It's something that they're taking a closer look at on their end as well. So at this point, I'd like to just...
Can I have one question?
Sure.
We discussed at one point that there was some type of an internal accounting method
Mhm.
where we could allocate
Yeah.
the funds. It's something we have to do on our own.
And we're actually going to be required to do that from the Department of Revenue too. When we intake water receipts and sewer receipts, we're required to account for them separate. And in fact, when on Joe's slide that you saw where it says we'll have to reformat the budgets that were passed, the budgets were passed for the water and the sewer departments, and those are stable, solid, but legal budgets. But we'll have to put them into a combined sheet to show that they are coming from the same account. But it'll be line item 1 will be wages from water, and then line item 2 will be wages from sewer. So it'll all be the same budgets, just wages, expenses.
We
So
talked internally, and once that, I got that, that guidance from DOR as recently as this morning. So once we formally combine the two budgets and put it down on paper, we'll walk it through the Finance Committee like any other budget.
yeah, even though it's already been passed, we want to cross our T's and dot our I's, make sure everyone understands everything going forward.
Can I,
But yes, we will have to account for it separately on the back end to make sure that water has a rate that's going toward water costs and sewer has a rate going toward sewer costs.
The reason for my question was,
Sorry.
one of the biggest concerns was paying back the
Mhm.
water users for closing that enterprise fund. The internal accounting we can use to allocate funds to actually pay that money back.
No, we can't.
Not paying it back, but we can allocate those funds for projects over and above. Isn't there some method we can use?
Maybe, but we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, we can use it for, we can use the retained earnings towards project funds. Yes. So that's the answer to that question there, is once it falls to retained earnings, it's the retained earnings of a combined account. So yes.
Okay.
can I ask,
I'm sorry. Mitch, just one quick statement, and I'm glad to open the floor to you. It isn't just II here in Rutland. We've gone back and looked at the rates and looked at the rates we've been using over the last 5 years. It's not just II. The rates for transportation and treatment have gone up regardless of II. So although we wouldn't be in the hole, we would still be in the hole because we didn't have enough money coming in, whether we had II or not. So the rate, we needed to raise rates regardless of II. All II did was make it look worse than it is. We've needed to raise rates for some time. Both the transportation and the treatment rates have gone up, I don't know, 17, 18, maybe 20% in cases.
well, and based on the chart you provided, it looks like the rates weren't adequate for what was actually being used for the last 5 or 6 years. Is that
That's our belief, yep.
okay?
Yeah.
My question to you, Mike.
Thank you.
What happens if we do not get the vote we need in the fall to dissolve the accounts?
The DOR will withhold our tax rate, which means that we'd be running at a structural deficit for the entire budget until we're at our levy capacity. So we're at our full 2.5%. We don't have any wiggle room with that. We'd be operating at a structural deficit until the money that's paid back is paid back.
Okay.
Until, not the money that's paid
Yeah.
back, until those get closed, because DOR is saying it's just a way to have a cleaner accounting system, because if they don't get closed, then we technically have 3 existing accounts. 2 that have money that was in them from pre July 1st,
Yep.
and then one that's got money in it from July 1st onward. So since DOR is allowing us to count the money that's in them currently so it can fall to free cash and then we can appropriate it back, the reverse is that they take that out of our free cash and put those back into those accounts until it's cleaned up.
DOR considers the current water and sewer enterprise accounts, the individual ones, one water, one sewer, closed as of June 30. And they suggest we only have the one going forward.
Yes. And until those are officially closed, and if officially closed, it'll be all the that was in there will fall to free cash, so it can be put back into water and sewer accounts. Did that sound correct, Dan? Before I continue on there,
That is correct.
thank you.
Thank you.
Just as a side note, too, because this was evident in both of the budget charts that you saw in Joe's presentation, as well as the two that are taped to the sides of the wall. While extremely smaller on the sewer side compared to the water side, you'll notice that on the sewer side, electricity is, actually on both, electricity is the second biggest chunk of the budget. I did mention yesterday at the meeting of the select board that we are looking into reasons why we've had such high electricity costs in the past 2 quarters. This isn't just something we're seeing just on water and just in sewer. It's stuff we're seeing townwide. So it's something that we're already looking into on that end as well. So that should help once we see that further on. But again, where these are paid out of the rates, I want to point out that that's another thing that we're looking at.
Okay.
Harry Seckman, 13 Beechwood Drive. Mr. Chairman, whoever this goes to, I have a 2-part question. First part is, are we still going to charge the rates that we're looking at and in essence overbilling our sewer users when we can't pay water back, according to the DOR? Because my understanding was part of that was the excess for being able to pay back water over a 3-5-year period. So where does that stand?
Director Buckley.
That's all right.
We used the model prepared by the Abrams Group to regenerate healthy retained earnings in both water and sewer. We originally proposed a 50% raise, and we went to a 55% raise to make sure that no sewer revenues, that if there was any retained earnings, it wouldn't be augmented by water, basically what we did.
Okay. So, if I may follow up, so the retained earnings that we're building off this 1063 or 5 rate,
We'll stay in just sewer.
it'll in sewer, but according to the town administrator, we do have the ability then to use those retained earnings to pay back water,
We cannot pay back water.
no matter what.
It can be put towards projects that may help a water
Okay?
situation down the line, but it can't directly go into a water-related fund.
And we went from 55% to 50% to make sure that nothing water-related would be used for sewer.
Okay. All right. I'm just looking at it from the water user's
I know that's a
point of
simple
view.
answer, but
Yeah.
No, I understand. I'm just trying to help the water users understand that with the DOR reeling, the money they put into sewer, that's not theirs anymore. That's gone. So,
you know,
and I say that, I'm with a water and a sewer user, so, I have other than the rates, I'm really not, against it or anything.
Address your question to the board, and then we'll
sorry.
Okay.
address it to the appropriate person. So
Okay.
you have a second question, you said?
Yeah, the second question I have is, and I think you've already answered it, was regarding, number one, was using retained earnings for water that was built up in sewer. And the other one was the rate. Was the rate still going to stay the same? Because part of that was designed originally in the original rate weeks ago to help pay back the water fund. So is that rate going to stay the same, or will it go down now on sewer?
Mike, can you address that?
Sure. So, Mr. Seckman, the rate that was there a couple weeks ago, when it was raised from the original 50% to 55%, that actually wasn't put in to repay water. That was put in to take the water money that was subsidizing the sewer funds out of that and putting it back into the water side of things.
Okay.
So we were going to then do a next step, step 3, if you will, to then find out how much we would have to tack on top of that to pay water back as a separate charge. So that bump that was from 50 to 55 actually was something that we would have been required to do after receiving this notice from DOR anyway then, because we can't take water money to subsidize sewer.
Okay.
So that bump was going to happen for that anyway. So that's where that increase happened there.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, the $10.66 per 100 cubic feet of flow is currently the set rate. Is that what we're trying to figure out tonight, that that's the rate we're going to charge? Or is that going to be changed in another week or 2 weeks when some other information becomes available?
No, that's the rate.
Go ahead,
That's the
Joe.
rate.
If you can stand up and answer the question.
That's the rate as proposed.
Okay. Those are my 2 questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
One quick thing, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
For the administrator, we talked at length about what happens, how they consider the overruns we've had in sewer, and what would have happened if it had been managed in a certain way. And could you try and explain that?
Go right ahead.
In our conversations with the Department of Revenue, they informed us that they're looking back at our process for handling paying our last quarter sewer bill between 2014 to the present, saying that they have some questions just on the process that was done. If there was a late bill, they are saying that it should have been reviewed as an issue to be taken out of cherry sheet receipts, and cherry sheet receipts, state aid money that we receive, or directly taken out of free cash, or encumbered in a specific certain way that had not been done in the past during this time period. The reason why 2014 is that was the first year that the town experienced some type of issue with its sewer bills, and then moving forward it just grew from there. So that's why they're going back there and sending us specific guidelines on how we should proceed going further. There is no recourse or anything like that that DOR or DLS is taking towards the town because of that. It's just making it so that they're sending us specific guidelines to follow going here forward. But if we have a bill that's outstanding in a fiscal year, it becomes threatened from as a reduction of how much we receive in state aid and in a reduction of how much we have in our free cash certification. The process that they've outlined for this year is that I've spoken of 2 votes that will have to be put forward at the fall town meeting. Those are votes 2 and 3 in the sequence. Vote 1 will have to be a vote to pay the 4th quarter bill to the DCR in the city through the city of Worcester out of free cash. Now again, it looks as if it's general fund free cash, but that will include all of the money that was in the water and the sewer accounts as of July 1st. So it's really taking that out of that appropriation. The second vote will be to appropriate the difference of what was originally in the water and sewer enterprise accounts and that bill, and putting the remainder of that into the new enterprise account. And then after that, everything else will just be regular general fund free cash. So the 3 votes and that we'll have to take will be to pay the back Worcester bill for the 4th quarter, that $212,000, to move the remaining balance that were in water and sewer enterprise back into the combined account. And then the third will be, once that's officially done and the money's officially moved from free cash into the combined enterprise accounts, to rescind the former water and sewer enterprise accounts. So those will be the 3 votes that we'll have to take from there per DOR's guidelines.
In that order?
Yes.
Would it be appropriate just for public consumption that we read the email we received from DOR through the chair? Is that something the chair would be? It's a short email. It kind of summarizes all the points, what we need to do. So, it's this one.
The whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's about a page. I don't know if that's something we'd want to do for the public, but
Oh, we can certainly do that.
Sure. We do. I would just say that whoever reads it, it can be me, even just for the acronyms. Just say what they stand for rather than the acronym for those that aren't aware of that.
Well, you're on a roll, so you might as well just keep going.
Okay. We received this today at 2:53 p.m. from Mary Jane Handy from the Department of Revenue, Division of Local Services. Mike and Joe, thank you for taking the time to discuss Rutland's water and sewer enterprise issues. First, I would like to make 3 points. 1, the law requires certain things that DLS cannot change. For instance, Dan, you're going to have to have 4453 F and a half. That's a provision of Massachusetts general law that dictates enterprise accounts. Requires that town meeting revoke the 2 existing enterprise funds. 2, the warrant Article 11 at town meeting was deficient. What that means there is that it created the new account. It didn't rescind the old accounts. So that's deficient, and it only did half. There should have been 2 votes instead of 1. 3, it appears that the town has been paying one fiscal year's bill with the next fiscal year's appropriation as mentioned in the Abrahams Group report. Since 2014, fourth quarter DCR City of Worcester sewer enterprise bills were paid with next year's appropriation. It appears that the sewer enterprise should have closed in deficit in fiscal 18 and at least the year before. Just as a side note, I'm trying to explain these as I go for anyone who hasn't been familiar with the process. We did ask for a clarification on this as those bills were paid out of retained earnings from the sewer account and not out of the direct appropriation. So we're just going to do a double check on that one as well. Steps that need to be taken. The Bureau of Accounts substantiate that the outstanding sewer invoice for FY19 service was for FY19 services. The budget sheets provided by the town accountant reflect an estimated FY19 deficit of $304,000 in the sewer enterprise funds due to estimated outstanding expenditures of $300,000. When Joe proposed the original budget, he proposed it saying that there was an express deficit in it, knowing that we were going to have this rate structure, rate discussion going forward, and the deficit in that account accounts for his proposed increase in rates. Since the outstanding sewer invoice for FY 2019 is for FY 2019 services, the town accountant must record the bill in FY19 sewer enterprise in the FY19 sewer enterprise fund, which will likely result in an appropriation deficit. The town will have to use other available cash to pay the bill. Cannot use retained earnings in the water enterprise fund to pay the sewer bill, and cannot use FY20 appropriation to pay the FY19 sewer bill. That's saying, as of today, we can't have a special town meeting tomorrow and say, just take all the money out of water. We have to go through the whole free cash process that was outlined in the front. Although the town has not satisfied the statutory requirements to close the 2 separate enterprise funds, I advise the town accountant to close the sewer enterprise and water enterprise funds as of June 30th, 2019, and record all relevant activities for the fiscal year. Any remaining funds and deficits will be accounted for in the general fund. Division of Local Services will allow this accounting transaction subject to the town making the appropriate town meeting votes under Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53, F and a half, to revoke both water and sewer enterprise accounts at the town meeting before the tax rate is set. Tax rate approval will be subject to the town taking these votes. The town accountant should begin recording FY20 water and sewer operations in the new combined water sewer enterprise account as of July 1st, 2019, per the town meeting vote to establish a combined enterprise. All future water sewer enterprise activity is to be recorded in the new combined enterprise account. The Bureau of Accounts will calculate the town's free cash with the inclusion of the closed funds, deficits of the 2 enterprise as well. The Bureau of Accounts will allow funds of the two enterprise to be included in the free cash certification subject to the town taking the appropriate town meeting votes under Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53, F and a half, to revoke both enterprises at the town meeting before the tax rate is set. Tax rate approval will be subject to the town taking these votes. That sounds like she's repeating herself there, but that's just, again, further clarifying that if the accounts aren't revoked, then rather than giving us that free cash money that were in the two accounts so that we can appropriate it back in, they'll just take that out and pay the bills that way and put them into the former accounts that haven't been revoked. At the next town meeting, which must be before the tax rate is set, the town must vote to revoke the two enterprise accounts as stated above. After the vote to revoke the funds and before the tax rate is set, town meeting appropriates from free cash certified as of July 1st, 2019 to fund the FY19 illegal appropriation deficit of the sewer enterprise fund. They have to put illegal deficit because the only account you're allowed to run in deficit is snow and ice. So since this has a deficit between the fiscal years, which is only allowed in snow and ice, that's why it's illegal. There was no malicious activity behind it. I will send a formal correspondence reiterating the information in the next few days. Feel free to contact me with any questions. Mary Jane Handy, Director of Accounts, Division of Local Services, Massachusetts Department of Revenue.
Thank you.
Sheila and Mike, Sheila and Jeff, you still there?
Yes, sir.
Yep, still here.
Do you have anything you want to add or any questions for Mr. Buckley or anybody?
No, thank you, Joe. That was a good explanation.
I'm hoping for Mike to be able to get a little bit of clarification on Mary Jane's understanding that we used next year's appropriation to pay the bills. You know, none of this is very good, but the fact of the matter is we were using certified free cash from the previous fiscal year that gets certified and we then go to fall town meeting. There was in no way a use for, say, an FY whatever bill using the next year's appropriated and approved budget from town meeting to pay that final fourth quarter bill. Mike, is that fair? I know you and I talked briefly about that.
Yeah, so like I said, we've asked for clarification on her on that. We've used retained earnings from the sewer account to pay that bill later on. Retained earnings in an enterprise account is the same as free cash in the general fund. It's anything collected over or anything that you budgeted for that you spent less than was used to pay that bill. So it was the retained earnings from the previous year before, not a budget appropriation from that fiscal year. So that is why we're just asking for clarification on that. Was that what you were talking about, Sheila?
Yeah, that was the only thing. Thank you.
So, through the chair, is the only reason now we are combining the water sewer enterprise funds? And why are we, I guess the question is, why are we combining them if the reason before was to use retained water earnings to pay sewer, but we can't do that until it falls to free cash, right?
Correct.
Is there an alternative to combining those enterprise funds at this time?
Go ahead.
The short answer is no, because the vote was taken, and that vote has to hold for 3 years. Per the statute that says when a new enterprise account is created, it can't be rescinded for another 3 years after that. And
Okay.
that's why we still have to vote to go back and do that. Again, this is a syntax type thing, so it does sound kind of silly saying it like this way, and I don't mean to make it seem like a trivial matter, is because by allowing the amounts in the existing water enterprise and sewer enterprise accounts to fall to free cash, that allows what was in the water account to be used at that point to pay that, because it's no longer water money paying a sewer bill, it's free cash paying a sewer bill. So it's moving something
semantics
over
issue,
and changing
right.
the color of it almost.
Yeah, it's interesting accounting. Yeah, okay. That answers my question.
Okay.
So, does what we're proposing tonight, because there are no good options, there's just the least of bad options, right? Because with Joe's presentation and his research, I mean, we've been running deficits for the last 5 years, which was in one of the consultant reports, and then it looks like we haven't been billing adequately with our rates in terms of consumption or usage of the system for the last 5 or 6 years. Is that correct, Joe? 5 or 6 years? Is that, I think your chart went back to what, 2015? Is that?
Just to clarify, I looked at it, the consultant looked at it, the Abrahams group looked at it, and independently, and then trying to compare it.
Yeah.
The Abrahams called out maybe back as far as 14. I saw shortfalls with our ability to pay bills back to 15.
Okay.
I don't know, how did you make out? Similar? Yeah. Dan, you looked back, right? Would you say the last 3 anyways?
Yeah, if I might.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, when I looked
You have to identify yourself first.
Dan Haynes, town accountant, sorry. When I looked at the numbers, if I compared, and I'm just looking at the city of Worcester bills for the fiscal year, from 15 to 16, it actually decreased by 0.08%. Went from 470,939 down to 475.71. It wasn't until 2017 that it went up 20%. This is a relatively short period of time. I mean, and it went up another 13% to the city of Worcester from 17 to 18. The first year we had an issue paying the bill was fiscal 17, and we were about $19,000 short. And to Sheila's point, what we did is we paid the city of Worcester all the money we had in that appropriation line, and we held the bill as an unpaid bill and funded it at the fall town meeting, either using an article within the sewer or using sewer free cash. So we never used next year's appropriation to pay the prior year's bill. That has never happened. But that was a 36% increase from 16, 17, into 17, 18. And
Right.
we couldn't have adjusted the rates fast enough. And in looking at it at that time, we didn't know is this an aberration? Is this something that's just a 1 year, issue? Because we didn't have the issue in 15 and 16.
So what do you attribute that to?
The I&I, the water table, some of it's an increase in the rates from the city of Worcester. Additional usage by our users, I'm sure, is some of that.
Well, some of it's also, we've gotten, the assessment for the Upper Blackstone has also increased.
Yeah, and those have increased, not as greatly as the city of Worcester, but they have increased.
So it's a combination of all of those things.
And don't lose sight of the fact that we were using sewer free cash to fund capital articles. About over $800,000 going back to fiscal 12. We used sewer free cash to fund I&I studies. About half of that 800,000 was for I&I. So it's like a perfect storm. We have this increase in our expenses, City of Worcester, Upper Blackstone, that we are not billing for. We didn't change the rate structure fast enough. But that's, in a short period of time, that's really what happened. And this thing just exploded. And we were using sewer free cash, which we would have had the available funds left in free cash if we weren't using it for capital purposes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah. May I ask
Go
for
ahead.
clarification? I think I know the answer, but more for the public. And this might be a Joe question, I'm not 100% sure. On the bill, you had mentioned for the sewer side that the I&I, there would still remain an I&I charge that would stay the same as what it has been, that it would really be the flow would increase. The I&I, is that kind of used as almost as a retained earnings in case we have an unexpectedly wet year to kind of build that, or is that used to do I&I work, I guess?
The initial question, the initial one you
Oh.
mentioned.
To kind of build a little bit of a, it's not gonna, it wouldn't have helped significantly in the sense of the past year, over the course of 1 year, that's going to pay something when we've had such a wet season.
Right.
But kind of it allows a little bit of an error buffer, is that?
Yes, that's what it's intended to do.
Thank you.
We have a question.
Harry Seckman, 13 Beechwood Drive. Two questions, or one comment. The rate that we're going to have in place, how long is that base rate, considering it go up, how long is that base rate going to be in place?
Go ahead.
What Director Buckley and I are proposing to do is do a 1-year study, see if it increases or not, and Joe can speak to this a little further, review what we need to do, and then recommend based on next year, keep the same increase. The study that was provided by the Abrahams Group had a 5-year plan for it. We want to just make sure if any additional increase is needed or necessary. If it stays the same, then it'd be the same. So we're at a 1 year unless changed.
Okay. And first off, I'd like to thank Abrams Group for being here, and also Weston Sampson. Thank you. I know at the last meeting there was some issues about having it come, so I appreciate that you showed up. The second one I have is a comment. This process has been painful, in my opinion, and I think that the board should look at doing something for sewer users. We do things for the whole public in the town. We landscape, we spend money to make it look nice. The town has the availability to buy rain barrels. Currently, they're upcharging Worcester. I can buy it cheaper at Worcester than I can buy it here. And I think to take some of the pain away, I use rain barrels, so I save quite a bit of money a year. I would like the board to consider at a discount from what the purchase price is to take some of the money that we now have to pay and look at the board to find a way to make rain barrels available to those people who are on sewer, who want to use it to save money. I probably save 2,000 to 3,000 gallons a year I use in my yard from my rain barrels. Now that's a lot of money to me. So if I could add another 1 or 2 rain barrels, or somebody could add 60 gallons a barrel every time it rains, that adds up to a lot, particularly with the numbers we're looking at. We're getting into some rainy seasons here. Doesn't look like we're going to go down. So throwing a number out, if the board could see fit, instead of making us pay 60 that I'd pay in Worcester, we could get them for 30. Somehow absorb a little bit for the sewer users who have to go through this pain for what's been happening. So that's just my comment. I would leave that considered. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. It's a good idea. Anybody else?
Can I have a follow-up comment to that?
Absolutely.
Chair?
Please.
Hillary from Weston and Sampson. If we do the rain barrel idea, can everybody discharge their sump pumps that are now discharging to the sewer into the rain barrels, please? Can we do that? That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah. Or at least put a notice out again that they shouldn't be doing that. All right. No other questions or comments?
Just for the benefit of the public, I have one question, or one comment.
A lot of the Worcester charges are based on the intermunicipal agreement. The intermunicipal agreement between the City of Worcester, Department of Conservation and Recreation, and the town, which allows us to transport wastewater through Holden and Worcester to where it's treated. That agreement expires in May of 20. And myself and the town administrator and legal counsel have made contact with DCR, and we'll begin negotiating a new agreement. It's a far out process, but ultimately we're hoping to negotiate some better aspects for the town, because that's what causes this bill. Thanks.
Could you just further comment on discussions with DCR about looking at I&I through their own system?
We
The
Sure.
attempts to do so.
We reviewed the existing agreement. When the agreement was signed, DCR was supposed to do an II study and then present that to the town, and then we could approve it and comment on it. We notified them that we never got the study, nor do we believe it was done. When we contacted DCR, we had gotten some informal comments back from them, because any work done to the pipelines owned by DCR, including II, they would pass on to the town. And that's the way the agreement is structured. That's going to be one of the sticking points when we go into negotiation.
But even if we were paying for some of that,
It would have
Could
helped.
save money.
Yes, it would have helped.
Just as add on to that too, I think the comment we got when we said, well, we didn't believe that they did any I&I was, yeah, but you would have had to pay for it anyway.
That was the comment we received.
And our rebuttal to that was, we would have paid for it, but we would have been paying a lot less than we're
We
paying
would
right
have
now.
benefited in the long run. And
Because
we've
we-
also,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt you,
Yep.
you contacted the state senator and the local representative. Both of them contacted both DEP and DCR, so that this is on the radar going forward.
And-
That's a long-term solution we hope will help.
Secretary Kennelly and Secretary Theodoros are also aware of it as well too, as the secretaries that oversee DCR and DEP.
thank you. Anything further from Jeff or Sheila? If nobody has anything further, I guess we can close the hearing.
Yeah, motion to close the hearing would be it.
Nothing further.
Nothing further.
Okay. I'll accept a motion to close the hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing,
So-
6:57 PM.
Second.
I have a second. Any comments? No comment? No comments? All those in favor?
Has to be by roll call.
Aye.
Name aye. Walker aye.
Or City Eye.
Whiteman, I.
Oh, Stillings, aye.
Goodbye.
Thank you. The hearing is now closed. Now we can have a discussion about setting the rate.
Yeah, so it'd be, we'd need a motion to accept the proposed rate from Director Buckley and Weston and Sampson as presented, or whatever the pleasure of the board is at this time.
We don't have it written down as a motion already, do we?
Just as presented would be, to accept the rate change as presented.
The last slide has, I think, the water supply is a 10%, and sewer is approximately 55, or $10.66 per CCF, and the I&I charges will remain at $33.25 per quarter.
So it'd be exactly as on the board.
Yeah, that's a Joe question. Do you mind?
No.
Joe?
Yes.
We're just looking for the, to word the motion, the percentage and then the I&I charge for for sewer.
Memo.
It's this, right?
It's that right there, right?
It's this one.
Okay.
That's the memo we got.
Increase.
You could just say per the bill sent to the board on this day, or the date you.
Yeah, so to increase sewer rates 55% to $10.66.
Exactly, on the board.
Yeah, okay. Because the I&I charge is staying the same, so that doesn't need to be amended.
Okay.
I think we should include that in our motion, because it's part of the rate setting, right? The I&I.
So the I&I charge is outside of the rate itself, so that'd be if the public hearing was on a rate structure,
Okay,
but this is on the rate itself.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, you want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion to set the water rates, as per the memo sent to the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners dated June 19th, 2019, for a 10% increase, flow-based rate, 10% increase. Do you want separate water and then sewer?
That would be correct,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, we have a second on that.
Stillings, seconds.
Anybody have any comments or questions? All those in favor? Walker, aye.
Whitman, aye.
Stillings, aye.
Goodbye.
For City, aye.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to set our sewer rates as per the memo sent to the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners dated June 19th, 2019, to an approximate increase of 55%, bringing it to $10.66 per CCF.
Do I have a second?
Stillings will second.
Any question or comments? None? All those in favor? Walker, aye.
Whitman, aye.
Stillings, aye.
Goodbye.
For City, aye.
To cover
Alright.
our bases, we don't need to set the I&I charge as keeping it at $33.25.
No, if we were increasing or lowering, then we would have to.
So, one last can I ask one last question before
Absolutely.
we close the, it's to Mr. Buckley. So, again, based on the charts we've received, it looks like we've kind of dropped the ball as a community in keeping the rates where they should be. This process moving forward, because this is going to be painful for some folks, this ensures, with both you and Mike on the ball with this, that this does not happen again moving forward, correct? I mean, this puts us on a better path of sustainability.
It does. It does put us on a better path of sustainability, yes. It's just one part of the puzzle. I mean, obviously, we're going to work tirelessly to try to keep the numbers down for folks and not go forward. But a big part of it was what was asked earlier. We have to review rates every year. And we have to take a fresh look at this every year. I'd like to think the pending DCR agreement may actually work out for the town in the long run. And when I said one piece, we still have to look at capital improvements and how those are funded, because we have to get that work done as well. Something that didn't come up in tonight's hearing, we committed to doing some work in, I don't have the street name, but I want to say the Colorio area, where we've had a lot of water main breaks. We have to come up with a way to fund that. Currently, we're looking at funding that through borrowed money. I think II money, which we have a proposed capital budget, that's also, we've got to figure out how we're going to fund that as well. Part of it, we're going to have to walk along, like I said, see how we are in a year or so and make those decisions. But I just want to make sure it's part of the puzzle to make sure we protect the ratepayers here in town.
My other question, too, is I know that there was some conversation a few meetings back, all of these meetings blurred together, about a sewer bank.
For me, too.
For you too. Has that been discussed at all any further about the sewer bank idea that was floated that I think the board had expressed some interest in?
There hasn't been any internal discussion yet, and in all frankness, we've been focused on these issues at this time. But once we get this resolved, I don't think it would be completely, something not. We'd consider it.
Okay.
If I may, I think with the data that has been amassed in a relatively short time, the past 6 months, to show the historical data correlating with the water, the rainfall and everything, I think we're in a better position now, as the board all has this information in front of us, and Director Buckley's on top of it with town administrator, to have those numbers in a better position to watch it a little bit more closely than just going a single bill as a single bill. I know from the board perspective, it hasn't been cohesively put together in front of me like what it was, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's just been going on for about 6 years, so it would have been nice to address it at some point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Anything further before we adjourn? Jeff, Sheila?
No, sir.
All set?
All right. I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Walker, aye.
For City, aye.
Whitman, aye.
Stillings,
Goodbye.
aye.
All right.